Here's another good tip for you guys. A lot of people try to use, when they're welding, they try to clamp their actual ground clamp to the piece of metal that they're welding. Say I'm welding these two things together right here. Makes it kind of awkward and hard to get a precise spot because the piece is always moving when the ground clamp is hooked to it. I mean, there's more room for error. So what I do, and what a lot of metal fab guys do, is actually get a steel plate. See, this is a steel plate. It's kind of rusty, but it still works. Basically, you just clamp your ground to this piece, and the current will actually travel through, all the way through and up to where you need it. So that's the easiest way to get precise welds, so you're not screwing around with trying to get the clamp on there and keeping your part in the position you want it. I got this old welder here. People always say, oh, the older welders, they kind of suck, but if you learn how to use any welder, it's going to be fine for you. The number one trick for welding effectively is, other than gas, is make sure that you listen. You need to listen to how the welds sound. If they sound like they're popping or if they sound like shit, then you'll know. You'll know to turn down the speed, turn up the heat, whatever. So that's really important. It always wants to sound like a smooth sound. If it's any choppy or anything like that, you should know. You just gotta kind of go by ear and test the welds, look at them and see. Most people know what good welds look like and what they sound like, but that's another beginner tip that I feel like a lot of people don't really understand, that they think, oh, if I just shit a weld on there, it'll hold. But no, it's got to be a good sound. That's one of the basic tips that I use all the time. You just got to listen. And eventually, it'll become natural, just like driving a car. Like, it's something you don't even think about. You'll just know when something's wrong. So just keep practicing, keep listening for that sound, and you'll know. When you're welding, you want to make sure that your welder is a good distance from what you're welding. It kind of seems counterintuitive, but you want your line here, which carries your wire, to be as straight as possible. So if I have my welder super close, say, to what I'm welding here, I'm welding this. If I have it super close, my hose is going to be curled. And a lot of times I can actually slow down your wire feed because it has to curve. Sometimes if it's really kinked, it'll just stop. So make sure you adjust your length of your welder from your part of your welding to make sure that your wire feed is as straight as possible. I know sometimes it's not realistic, but that's just another thing that you kind of got to learn. So if I'm welding right here, if I'm welding on this corner, this is fairly good. There's no kinks, nothing major. So make sure you do that and just keep that in mind when you're welding. Another tip, this is for gas welders. All of them are going to vary a little bit, but here's the flow meter. You want to make sure that your flow is up between 10 15, I don't know what the term or what the units are, but you want to make sure it's between 10 and 15. A lot of times you can play with it and kind of figure out what looks the best or what welds the best. Like I said, all welders are going to vary based on what kind of tip you have, how dirty it is. See, it's pretty dirty. What kind of gas system you got. That's going to vary, but usually just make sure that you adjust your gas, because the gas is what gives you a strong weld. Without gas, you'll have a shit weld. So that's another thing that helps you keep a clean weld, and keep that in mind. Make sure you have a clean nozzle. If you can really see in there, there's a bunch of shit stuck to it. This is the nozzle off the gun. I just took it off the head here. Anyways, you want to make sure that's clean, because that's what your gas travels through. If that's not clean and the gas is obstructed, your weld's going to have porosity and it's going to be dirty. So make sure that's clean. Basically, usually you just take a flathead screwdriver and kind of scrape it out of there. That's the easiest way to do it. And then also, make sure this is good, your tip here is good, because that's also important. Make sure it's clean and the wire can flow through unobstructed. Also, another tip, if you're trying to weld something upside down, say you're underneath a car like this, like underneath, you're going to want to turn your wire speed up a little bit because it's trying to fight gravity to feed up. I know some welders are auto feed, and some welders it doesn't make a difference, but for this one it does. So when I'm under a car, I actually have to turn the wire speed up a little bit, because otherwise it'll just burn back. It'll burn back into the tip and weld itself to the tip, or clog the tip. So that's another thing. Make sure you take that into account when you're welding either upside down or horizontally. That can make a difference in wire speed and how good your weld is. One more tip. See how rusty all this is? There's rust on there, rust on there. Rust and any contaminant will make your weld very weak. So what you want to do is you always want to have a clean surface, obviously. I'm not really setting a good example of this because this is so rusty. Basically all you got to do is take a grinding wheel to it, just clean it all up. You want your welds to be as clean as possible, especially if you want strong welds. Otherwise you'll just kind of get bird shit welds, and that's not good because it looks like it's going to hold, but then a couple years down the road, or even a couple days down the road, it'll break, and then you'll be like, fuck, you know, what do you do? So just make sure all your welds are always clean. It's kind of a basic tip, but I know there's a lot of kids that I know, and a lot of people that don't really understand that all welding is an electrical current. So it's just like a bad connection in the car. If it's bad, it's not going to work well. So make sure your connections are clean.